Today, let's talk about a topic that has existed in human history for thousands of years. Yet for most of that time, it has been hidden in the shadows, like an unspeakable secret. That is right, we're talking about menstruation and the extraordinary, sometimes shocking journey that women have gone through to deal with those few days each month. Before we dive into the story, I want you to think about one word, Taboo faded. You know, this word is actually a loan word. It comes from the Polynesian language, originally Tapua. And in its original Polynesian context, Tapua had an extremely specific reference, menstruation. Think about that for a moment. It is chilling. The core word in human language for forbidden, cursed, and untouchable was invented specifically to describe a woman's period. That means in our ancestors' subconscious, this wasn't just bleeding. It was practically a magical spell of prohibition. You think this is just ancient superstition, you'd be wrong. The history we're about to cover is full of jaw-dropping twists. You'll see how nurses on the battlefields of World War I discovered a world-changing absorbent material among the dead. You'll hear how, in the 1930s, male doctors gathered to seriously debate whether tampons would break the hymen, or even cause sexual pleasure, and most heartbreaking of all, we'll tell the story of a super product that was hyped to the skies, but because of corporate greed and arrogance, ended up causing a commercial disaster that killed 73 women. Ready? Let's turn the clock back thousands of years and see how ancient women got through it. In an age with no industrial products, getting through your period was all about creativity and DIY skills. Ancient Egypt, probably the most elegant of them all. Let's start with ancient Egypt. It has to be said, the Egyptians were advanced in many ways. They used a material called papyrus. Women would soak and soften papyrus, then roll it into rolls. It sounds a bit stiff, but back then it was top tier. Moreover, Egyptian culture was relatively tolerant of menstruation. They worshipped the goddess Hathor, who presided over fertility and beauty to the Egyptians. Menstruation was a symbol of female vitality. Though there were some ritual taboos, it was far from being a curse. Ancient Greece invented the tampon prototype, but also invented a vicious theory. Over in ancient Greece, things got a bit weird. Greek women invented something called Motos. Simply put, they wrapped rags or cotton fluff tightly around a small wooden stick. This was the earliest ancestor of the modern internal tampon. Pretty clever, right? But the Greek men, especially the famous physicians, had some astounding ideas. They coined the infamous medical term hysteria. Which in Greek comes from the word for uterus. The medical authorities Hippocrates believed that if a woman went too long without sex or pregnancy, her uterus would become lonely and dry and wander around her body. If it reached her heart, she'd have chest tightness. If it reached her throat, she'd scream. And menstrual irregularities were seen as the uterus throwing a tantrum. This theory, forcibly linking a biological phenomenon to mental illness, poisoned Western medicine for 2,000 years. Ancient Rome, Pliny the Elder's scientific vilification. In Roman times, it got worse. The famous scholar Pliny the Elder wrote in his Natural History, a woman in her period, if she walks by, will make new wine turn sour, seeds become sterile, plants wither, and even dogs that taste menstrual blood go mad. Can you believe this was the most authoritative scientific work of its time? These statements seeped like poison into Europe's cultural DNA, directly contributing to the decline of women's status in the Middle Ages. Diverse attempts around the world, human resilience. Of course. Women elsewhere weren't idle either. In Japan, women used folded tissue paper, changing it very frequently. Among Native American tribes, women used nature's gifts, like highly absorbent moss or soft buffalo hide. Blank space erased from history. Why didn't we know this before? At this point, you might ask. Why have we never learned this in history textbooks? 2 reasons. First, the material itself. Whether papyrus, cloth, or moss, all are organic and decay easily. Archaeologists can dig up bronze tripods and stone tools, but they can hardly dig up a 3,000-year-old sanitary pad. Second, and most importantly, Fey history was written by men. In the past millennia of patriarchal society, the men who held the pens considered menstruation filthy, lowly, and unworthy of mention. They'd rather spend tens of thousands of words recording a minor battle that killed a few hundred people than leave a single line about how half the population managed their cumulative thousands of days of bleeding. This collective silence eventually turned into institutionalized humiliation. Moving into the Middle Ages and early modern period, menstruation was no longer just an inconvenience, it became a shackle. Faith, the chains of religion, spiritual contamination. If you open major religious scriptures, you find striking consistency. Leviticus explicitly states that a woman during her period is unclean, and anyone who touches her becomes unclean too. The Torah, the Quran, and even medieval Christian theology all viewed it as God's punishment on women for Eve's eating of the forbidden fruit. This was not just physical avoidance, it was framed as Fey spiritual pollution. Fey extreme case. Nepal's menstrual huts. This mindset, taken to its extreme, created cruel traditions like Nepal's Hopadi. During their periods, women are forbidden from entering their homes. They must move into dark, damp little huts infested with snakes and insects. They cannot drink clean water or eat nutritious food. Even today, though Nepal has legally banned the practice, it persists in many remote mountain areas. Every year, young girls die from carbon monoxide poisoning while trying to keep warm in these huts, or are bitten by venomous snakes. This is the bloody price behind the word taboo. Faithy hidden life of medieval European women. So how did medieval European noblewomen cope? The sad answer: they just endured. They wore multiple layers of petticoats. Ordinary women used rags tucked between their legs. That is why English has the slang phrase asterisk and the rag asterisk for being on your period. In those times, women were required to maintain absolute silence. Society expected you to act as if nothing was happening. You had to endure the chafing of cloth, the odor, the panic of leakage, and wash those bloody rags in the dead of night, hanging them where no one could see. This silent dignity was actually a form of psychological bullying against women. The turning point came, unexpectedly, on the most brutal battlefields. 1854. The awkwardness of the first patent. Actually, as early as the mid-19th century, someone had thought about making sanitary pads. The first patent was issued in 1854, but the society of that time was too conservative. Manufacturers didn't dare advertise. If you went to a store to buy them, male clerks would give you strange looks. So these early attempts mostly failed, and women still had to stick with their rags. Velduy's gift, Kimberly, Clark's accidental discovery. Fame came World War I, an American paper company called Kimberly-Clark, because cotton was being diverted to gunpowder and military uniforms, faced severe shortages. They developed a wood pulp fiber material called Cellucotton. This material was incredibly absorbent, 5 times more than cotton, and dirt cheap, so it was mass shipped to the front lines as surgical dressings and bandages. The nurses' little trick. Nurses on the battlefield were the first to discover this treasure. Think about it, in that environment, nurses were run off their feet, with no time to deal with their own cloth pads. They had a bright idea. Since this material could absorb soldiers' wound blood, it could certainly absorb menstrual blood too. So nurses began privately cutting these surgical dressings into strips and using them as disposable sanitary pads. After the war, Kimberly-Clark received loads of feedback from frontline nurses. Company executives suddenly realized a massive blue ocean market had appeared. 1920s, Kotex launches, and the awkward marketing ***. In 1920, the first truly commercially successful brand, Kotex was born. But how to sell it became a huge problem. Magazines at the time refused to run ads. They'd say, "This is too obscene, our readers will complain." Male pharmacists also found it embarrassing to sell, and women were too ashamed to ask. Hathor solution, the brilliant self-service coin box ***. To solve this social anxiety, manufacturers and pharmacies came up with a clever tactic. Pharmacies placed a blue wooden box on the counter with Kotex written on it. Women would walk over, drop 50 cents into the coin box, and take a box themselves. No need to say a single word to the clerk. This was the earliest prototype of modern self-service shopping. This humble strategy, designed to avoid humiliation, became a marvel in consumer history. After pads, let's talk about tampons. Dr. Hass's love for his wife, Faye, in the 1930s. A Denver doctor, Dr. Earl Hass, noticed that his wife hated those bulky pads back. Then pads were like small cushions held by belts around the waist, very uncomfortable. He remembered hearing that some women in California used sponges inserted internally to absorb blood. So he started tinkering in his lab. Faithy applicator. Not just for convenience, Dr. Hass invented the core element of the modern tampon, the paper applicator. But his purpose for the applicator wasn't just ease of insertion. It was largely for social morality. In those days, people believed that a woman directly touching her own genitals with her fingers was extremely obscene and could even provoke lust. The applicator acted like an isolation shield, allowing women to change tampons without ever touching their own bodies internally. This was not just an engineering solution, it was a sociological solution. Born to conform to conservative morals. The great moral debate. Hymen and pleasure. After tampons hit the market, they didn't take off immediately. Instead, they triggered a full-blown moral panic. Male doctors of the time argued fiercely in medical journals. Their two main concerns: breaking the hymen. They believed unmarried girls using tampons would lose their virginity. Though science later proved that tampons are very small and the hymen is an elastic ring, like tissue, this didn't calm the panic. Sexual pleasure. They even worried that the friction of tampons might cause pleasure and lead women into depravity. To counter these absurd claims, tampon companies had to bring in large numbers of female doctors and sportswomen to endorse the product, emphasizing that it was for ease of exercise, not self-pleasure. A forgotten genius. Mary Kenner Faye here. I must mention a name erased by history, Faye Marie Kenner. She was an African-American inventor. In the 1950s, she invented an elastic sanitary belt with a leak-proof pocket, vastly superior to anything on the market. But when manufacturers saw she was a black woman, they pulled their investment. This brilliant inventor held multiple patents in her lifetime, but never earned a cent from her inventions. This is history's double malice toward women, especially women of color. Now we come to the 1970s. This is probably the darkest and heaviest chapter in the history of menstrual products. Faye Procter and Gamble's ambition, Faye in the 1970s. Consumerism was rampant. The giant P&G decided to enter the tampon market. To beat the incumbent brand Tampax, P&G rolled out its big gun, Faye Really Tampons. Their slogan was incredibly enticing. Even your worries can be absorbed. At the time, ordinary tampons could only absorb a few times their weight in blood, but Rely used high-tech synthetic materials, like carboxymethylcellulose, that could absorb 20 times their own weight. This meant a woman might not need to change it all day. The nightmare begins. Toxic shock syndrome. Rely quickly captured 20% of the market. But soon, hospitals across the US began seeing mysterious cases. Large numbers of young women suddenly developed high fever, vomiting, diarrhea, and rashes. Then rapidly went into organ failure. The disease was named toxic shock syndrome, TSS. The CDC investigated and found a shocking correlation. Among confirmed cases, over 80% had used Rely tampons, scientific blind spots, and corporate greed. Why did high absorbency become a killer? because Rely was fey too dry. Asterisk asterisk, while absorbing menstrual blood, it also sucked out all the moisture and protective layers from the vaginal walls. When women removed the dried out tampon, it caused tiny tears in the vaginal lining. At the same time, this super-absorbent material became the perfect breeding ground for Staphylococcus aureus fey. The bacteria's toxins entered the bloodstream directly through those tiny wounds. What is most infuriating is that during the investigation, it came to light that P&G had actually received similar adverse reaction feedback in early testing. But they ignored it in order to rush to market fey legal consequences and belated warnings fey in 1980. Rely was recalled en masse. In the end, asterisk asterisk 73 women died fey, and thousands were left with permanent disabilities. This tragedy fundamentally changed the industry. From then on, the FDA established strict absorbency standard labels, the regular, super, and other gradings you see on every tampon box today, along with mandatory warnings about TSS. This was the first time in human history that regulatory progress was bought with consumers' blood. From the 1980s to now, we've finally begun to emerge from the shadows. Asterisk, 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 1985. Courtney Cox's groundbreaking word fey did you know. It wasn't until 1985 that the word asterisk, asterisk, period asterisk, asterisk was first said on a television commercial. It was Courtney Cox, later of Fey Friends Fey fame, in a Tampax ad, who matter of factly said asterisk, asterisk, period. Asterisk, asterisk. Before that, every ad used euphemisms like those days or the special time. This single period marked the moment mainstream culture finally recognized menstruation as a normal physiological fact, not some shameful quirk. Visual evolution. From blue to red fey, we all remember those classic pad commercials. A model in white pants running, with a cup of mysterious blue liquid poured onto the pad. Why blue? Because red was considered too real, too bloody, too disturbing. It wasn't until 2020 that brands like Kotex started using red liquid in their ads. Fey took a full 100 years for us to dare admit that blood is red. Asterisk, asterisk, fey social policy progress. No more paying for periods fey in modern times. Discussions about menstruation have entered the political arena. What is asterisk, asterisk, period poverty? Asterisk, asterisk, worldwide. Hundreds of millions of girls can't afford sanitary pads, so they miss school every month, or resort to using newspapers, leaves, and other substitutes, leading to infections. In 2022, Scotland became the first country in the world to legislate free provision of all menstrual products. Many US states have also started exempting the so-called asterisk, asterisks tampon tax. Asterisk, asterisk, people have realized sanitary pads aren't luxuries. They're basic dignity, just like toilet paper. The rise of sustainable products, fey menstrual cups, period underwear, organic cotton tampons. Today's women have more choices than ever before. This isn't just product diversification, it is reclaiming control over their own bodies. After all this, let's look back. From Polynesia's Tapua Taboo to ancient Egypt's papyrus, from the wood pulp in WWI trenches to the bloody lessons of the Rely tragedy. This whole journey is actually a history of women constantly fighting back and reclaiming the narrative. Why do I spend so much time on these old chestnuts? Because, as we said at the beginning, taboo often stems from ignorance and humiliation from fear. Asterisk, asterisk, when a society dares to face red liquid head, and dares to openly discuss uteruses on television, and dares to stop making girls feel ashamed of their own biological nature. Only then does that society truly move toward civilization. As the old saying goes, life, luck, and fate. I believe a woman's greatest luck isn't about how expensive her sanitary pads are. It is about whether she can embrace her own body and whether she can live those thousands of days with dignity in an environment free from shame. Fey kindness is respect for facts. Civilization is protection for the vulnerable. Asterisk, asterisk. If you feel today's video gave you a new perspective on this unspeakable secret, or if you have your own experiences with period shame or choices, feel free to comment below. Here, we don't need euphemisms, we don't need blue liquid, We only talk about real science and real history. Please share your thoughts or write down ***, embrace yourself. Reject shame. ***. Let's create a positive energy field here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with every woman around you, and with those male friends willing to understand the truth. Find a standing is the beginning of respect. ***.